Phoenix we're fingers are crossed that it's going to be better because of the changes. So this is as good as time as any to kind of go over the trends at the track and the odds and our picks. So this segment is brought to you by PlaybookSports.com. You can check out also the new YouTube channel of Playbook Experts. And Phoenix, the 1 mile track, most similar to New Hampshire and Richmond, correct?
Correct. Yep.
14 of the last 17 winners at Phoenix started in the top 10. So qualifying is going to matter. So keep that in mind when you decide to wager on the race this week. 10 of the last 17 in the top 5, including 4 pole sitters, and 3 pole sitters have actually won in the last 5 races. We talked about last week about one ever at Las Vegas, and it held true again. So, of course, when Logano won the pole and his odds went down and he was the favorite, I'm sure we could just laugh. It's like, okay, well, go ahead and take him because it ain't going to matter.
Yeah. Nope. That's exactly what we wanted.
Yeah,
and he did. This one, the reason the poll, and I got it in my article on Friday, the number 1 pit stall at Phoenix is so crucial there. It's kind of the deciding factor. So if you're still in the hunt coming to that final pit stop, that number 1 pit stall, they've been talking about it the championship week in the last 2-3 years, is because the championship 4 always, usually most weeks they qualify, the pole sitter, you get the first choice. Second place, you get the second choice. So with the championship 4, how they do it is they qualify and then they go in order of your qualifying for the championship 4. So let's just say none of them win the pole, but they're 2, 5, 7, 9 or whatever. Second place will get the first pick. So they get the first pick. So that's why that tells you how important that first pit stall is they want a championship 4 guy in it. And that's why you've seen the trends here in the last several years is the pole sitter for the championship 4 race.
Makes sense.
Typically is a championship 4 driver.
There you go.
They get the number 1 pit stall.
So we don't really care too much about that at this race.
No, but you do
top 10, but not pole.
You do want the pole. Well,
you
I
want
think it's something to look at. Yeah.
So
now, if it's someone completely random, it's because you have to use it to your advantage too, though, right? I mean, you could get the first pit stall, but if I'm not making fun of this guy anyway, but let's just say Corey LaJoie wins the pole. What are the odds he's in the top 3 or 4 coming to the final pit stop to utilize that number 1 pit stall? It's got to be somebody that's going to be up there and is going to utilize it. So if it is one of the favorites and they win the pole, then you might want to double down on that because there's a good chance they can use that number 1 pit stall to their advantage.
There have been 5 different winners the last 5 races. The thing I noticed, though, that might be also key is that Ford swept last year, and they had only had 1 win in the previous 7. But last year, as we know, is more important with the new car. Toyota, 0 for the last 5 races, so they haven't won in 5. Last year, they did not have a top 4 or a top 6 in either race. So that to me is the reason why, because there's so many possibilities with like the 8-1 to 12-1 drivers that I just eliminated the Toyotas because I had to find a reason to eliminate some of these drivers anyway. It's so hard to really predict who's gonna win when you have like 7 or 8 potential 8 to 12-1 drivers to choose from.
And that's what makes this week so tough is we don't know what this package is going to do to
and
these
there
cars.
You go. That's also now.
And that's because if you look at last year's the only really thing you can look at because it's the only relevant races, because race are twice, to this car, to this weekend, because prior, I mean, we saw how much different this car drove. And Ford was in their own zip code. I mean, it wasn't even close. I mean, they led 89% of the laps at Phoenix last year, 558 for 624. 248 at 312 in the sprint race. They led all but 2 laps in the championship race. And the only other drivers to lead was the Chevrolet camp. Hendrick Motorsports led 65 of the 66, and AJ Allmendinger led 1 lap in the fall race. So, like you said, Toyota didn't even lead a single lap there last year. However, does this new package suit them?
Yeah, well, we'll find out.
That's what you don't know. Yep. So we really don't know. Practice. We might know a little bit of practice on Friday because it's it's a different format. It's not the practice and then qualify right after. They're giving a 50-minute practice session on Friday because this is all new.
Okay.
the thing that worries me is, it's also in my article for Friday, is does this sway favor to the big teams? Because you can make adjustments overnight. Whereas this P&Q session that we used to see in most races, it's the 20-minute practice, you go right into qualifying, that car is impounded, you can't touch it, you're really racing what you brought. This weekend's different. You got all of Friday night and all of Saturday morning to make adjustments on this car. So that's why I kind of went a little top heavy with my picks this week, because it's like, I think the top teams are going to have the resources to figure this out.
Yeah, I forget who asked the question. It might have been, could have been Boyer asked the question. They were interviewing the Trackhouse group, and they asked him about how'd you guys do it last year? You know, how'd you guys? You're off to another great start this year, so you're not a fluke. How'd you do it? And we're really working hard. It's like, come on, we all know how they did it. If they didn't change the car and they didn't change the rules in practice, they'd be the same guys with the same results. So just be real, will you? Don't tell us you're working hard. I know you're going to say it, but
everybody's working hard.
Come on.
If you're in professional, it doesn't matter what sport it is. You don't get there by half-assing it. So when I hear these teams say that, a lot of times, for the sake of the person saying it, I don't even put that quote in my articles. I'll just admit it.
Yeah, right.
Like, you're kind of
look bad.
You almost like, we're just going to outwork everybody. Well, don't you think Penske's outworking you too? Don't you think Hendricks? You figured something out, and everybody's working hard. The hardest thing in sports isn't the working hard; it's staying there. They've always said it's not I forget what driver told me this. It was several years ago, and they said the hardest thing about sports and racing isn't the climb to the top, it's staying at the top. Because if you're at the top, then you figured something out. It's harder to go from the top to even higher when you're already at the top. It's easier to go from the bottom to the top because you know what you need to improve upon. So it's kind of hard to improve on something you're already at the top at. So it's hard to maintain. And that, to me, is more beneficial and relevant than saying, we just work hard.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, in professional sports, you should. This isn't amateur stuff.
It would be nice if somebody just was truthful and just said, well, look, those rule changes and the new car, that helped us out tremendously. We can start like that. Come on. All right. How many drivers did you and I correctly predict together?
Well, you said you eliminated a lot of Toyotas up top.
Only 3.
4?
3.
We picked 4? 3. Okay.
Not many.
No.
Two top contenders and 1 long shot.
Blaney and Logano?
Blaney, yes.
Kyle?
No.
Chastain.
Yes.
Blaney, Chastain, and Suarez.
Yes.
Okay.
So, because I didn't have, we both didn't have a whole lot of picks. I only had 7 picks, and you had 9, I believe.
I would have had 7 with you, but the only thing I was going off Ford last year, and I'm really high still on RFK.
Oh,
and right now, if you look at my bottom 2 picks, that got me to 9 because it was the 40-1 and the 80-1.
There you go.
So I'm just gonna throw a little bit their way. Just, you never know.
All right, so we'll start with Hendrick and Byron. Look, the thing is, last week he was 12-1, just like this week. We liked them last week, but we didn't like the odds, as we said. And he went out and he dominated, and good for him. But now again, the question is whether or not he's going to be able to consistently do it. He did win a couple of times early last season, so it's not to say that he can't come back and win, but can he win back-to-back races, which I doubt he's ever done.
Never have. Nope.
So you're asking him to do something he's never done in his career, but this has been a decent track for him. Matter of fact, he has an Xfinity Series win at the track as well. But again, at this point in time, we just have no idea how Hendrick is going to react to the new changes either. But look, if that the problem is if you, this is what happens if you wait for qualifying to go through, and Hendrick all of a sudden, we love the new setup, and they go out and they dominate qualifying. Well, you're not going to get 12-1 anymore in Byron. Now, if he has the pole, he'll be 7-1. He'll be the co-favorite.
Yeah, and I also look at, granted, I said you can't take much stats from before last season, but we'll look at 21. He's got 4 straight top 10 starting spots there. 10th, 3rd. He qualified 3rd for this race last year, and 8th in the fall. So you know he's going to qualify well. So if you like him, you probably want to grab him.
Not a bad
now.
idea to take Byron again. Again, you're just going with something that's never happened before. He's never won back-to-back.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal fantasy play. I mean, he's got 4 top 10s in his last 6 starts there. It's just he's also never had a top 5 in Phoenix before either in the Cup Series.
Yeah, that helps.
And he's never won back-to-back races. Yeah. So, like, you're asking Lightning to strike twice in the same spot in 2 weeks.
And again, he didn't win last week unless it was the late caution either.
Yeah, Larson was going to get that. So I struggle to think. 12. If you really like him this week, grab him now because, like we just said, the number will probably drop in qualifying. But if you don't like him, just punt on him and just ride it a little bit early and know that, oh man, he looks good. He's on the pole, and just know that it seems to find. I mean, he led 15 laps in 2018, his first start there, and he led 12 laps last year. That's it. That's all he's led there in the Cup Series. So out of 27 total laps, what makes you think he's going to lead the final one on Sunday?
Okay, so there's several drivers. You can't take them all.
No.
And both of us have had pretty decent investments with the top drivers. You know, you've invested 19, 19, 15, 15, 14. I invested 25, 25, 20, and 15. So that's 5 on your side, 4 on mine, which means that there's going to be good drivers that we both didn't pick. For you, one of them was Larson. You did not take Larson. I did. This was one of my top choices. Why not? The engine issue. So I'm willing to forget that, especially when you consider the fact that without the engine issue last year in this race, he would have had 7 straight top 10s, 4 top 5s, and a win. He won, of course, the championship season. He's got 6 top 5s here in all. And yeah, I just kind of felt coming off the near win last week that he's probably chomping at the bit to go out there and complete the job here at a track that he has only just 1 win back on championship season in 21.
That's the only thing that scared me with him, was the 1 win of 17 starts. Is he going to go out and win? That race he won was the championship Ford. We know
25% chance of winning.
Yeah. Can he do it? And when the odds are a lot lower, that was the one thing that I balked on a little bit. But if you like him, grab him now. Again, because that's why I sided more in the Ford's favor, naturally, because the last year, all we can go by. But if you like him, then you got to look at, since 2014, March 2nd, 2014, when he made his debut at Phoenix, as far as his first Phoenix Cup Series, he has started in the top 10. Actually, I even take it farther. He's started in the top 4 rows, so the top 8, in all but 2 starts. 13 of his last 14 Phoenix starts, he started in the top 8. So you know he's probably qualifying up front. That's pretty much a given, him and Byron. So if you like him now, snag him, because that 8-1 number is probably dropping on Saturday when they qualify. It's just the fact he's 1 for 17 there, and that 1 win was championship round, when I could get the Fords for similar odds who looked beyond good last year. So that's the only reason I punted on him.
Bowman, the last of the Hendrick drivers to talk about, for me, it was a no-brainer. The only thing I wish I could have got better than 18-1, but I can understand why the odds are coming down on him, because he's now, as you mentioned before, I mean, look, he's second in points. He's finished in the top 8, all 3 races. He dominated this race, even though he finished 6th in 2016, leading 194 laps. So it's not like he hasn't experienced a good race here before. The question is how come he dominated that race in 2016? Like, what was so different about that year? And why, if you combine the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series, he only has 1 additional top 10 in 15 additional races.
Yeah, that race, if you remember right, too, he was in Dale Jr.'s car. That was when Jr. was out for concussions and he subbed. And there was a late race yellow in turn 1 that brought the caution out. Same deal we see in NASCAR races a lot. It changed the outcome of the inning. Or he would have won that race. But as you said, His best finish since then is 13th. So that's what scared me. And granted, this is the playoff race last year, so there's a difference here. However, he was 66-1 last time they were there. So they really dropped him. But he should be around 18-1 every week. I'm happy he's finally getting some respect, because it seems like he's always 30 to 35-1. But this, to me, was not the week to take him, because I can also get, which we'll get to, somebody like Chase Briscoe for the exact same odds. So I thought I went that direction rather than Bowman. But I think Bowman could be a solid fantasy play if he can just get in the top 10, which is something he's struggled to do there.
Yeah, I wouldn't have taken him except for the fact that he's off to such a great start that I just figured, okay, maybe he gets a win now, and then we'll see what happens. Trackhouse, Chastain 10-1, Suarez 35-1, and again, as you know, we both have Chastain and Suarez. So why not Chastain? Second and third last year. Suarez, if you look at it, he was ninth in this race last year, which matters more than the championship race. And he does have 3 top fives and 5 Xfinity Series races. The only thing that to question is that neither one of these drivers have ever led a lap at Phoenix. And I don't know if he led a lap in the Xfinity Series, Chastain, but Suarez has not in the Xfinity or a Cup, and Chastain in the Cup he has not. But you are getting 35-1 with Suarez. How hot he is. We just talked about Bowman. So again, a no-brainer for a long shot. And Chastain, considering how well he was last year, especially the third place finish, or I should say the second place finish in the non-championship race, was very impressive early on last season when nobody knew what Ross Chastain was going to become. So yeah, getting the first and the fourth drivers right now in points at 10 and 35-1 seemed like a pretty good way to go.
Yeah, I thought, honestly, Suarez probably should have been up there at 18-1 with Bowman in the sense that they're the only two with top 10s in every race this season. And he also was the top 10 in this race last year, Suarez being. You look at Loudon, which we said is a similar track as far as flatness and 1 mile, and they each, Suarez and Chastain, had top 10s there too last year, 5th and 8th respectively. 5th being Suarez, 8th being Chastain. So like, for the season, how they started and how they looked last year is a no-brainer. And I think Suarez was almost the deal of the week at 35-1. That just seems, again, name recognition. And Chastain, I do have in front of me. So he led 14 laps in the Xfinity Series.
All right.
2020, he led 4 laps and finished 9th. And then the championship race, he led 10 laps and finished 7th. He led in 2013 63 laps and finished 2nd in the Truck Series race.
Oh, the truck race. Okay.
Yep. So that's the extent of Ross Chastain's lap sled there. Okay. But he was coming last year at the end of that fall race. Blaney did a good job of doing interference there, because Blaney mentioned
Blaney should have won the race, first of all.
Yeah, and he mentioned he should have. He was told not to pass Logano, because I feel like if he would have, then Chastain probably would have passed Logano, and Chastain's the champion. But
again, that's another reason why they need to come up with a system, a new rule in the championship race, a bonus amount of money that the non-championship 4 drivers, if they win the race, they're going to get $500,000 or $1 million bucks.
Yeah.
And then Ryan Blaney will pass Joey Logano.
Yep. And I looked too last year too. Chastain, granted, we said he got kind of a 25% chance. He was plus 400, so 4-1 to win in the fall. And you're getting him at 10-1 right now in the spring for the same race, same car. Granted, we don't know the package, but it's like that was a no-brainer to just go ahead and snag him. But where we talked about the qualifying thing, he only qualified 17th and 25th there last year. So
that's good.
You could roll the dice and see if that number comes down, because Byron and Bowman are probably going to qualify well, and Larson should be up front.
Yeah, and Ford should qualify well, you would think.
Yeah, so he might drop from 10-1. So he might be one that, if you like, you might want to wait.
I just doubt he'll drop too much.
I doubt it. Yeah. There's a really much of a difference between 10-1 and 12-1 right now.
No.
I don't think it's worth it.
No.
Because what if Chevrolet has an even better package and he does qualify well? Yeah. So I think he's not dropping to 18-1. No. We know that. So I think if you're real finite with your money and you want to wait for 12 to 14 to 1, then there's some qualifying stats for you if you want to wait. But if you're like us and like, let's just snag him now, I would just go ahead and get him now.
RCR, now you have Kyle. This was one of the drivers you had, and I don't. So Kyle has been absolutely phenomenal here with 25 top 10s in 35 races. 12 of those are top 5s. 3 wins. He's led over 1,100 laps. But the reason I stood away from him, didn't like what happened last week. After the big win, after the Daytona result, I felt, all right, let's see what's going. See what kind of Kyle Busch consistency. Nope, nothing. Did nothing, had nothing. That worries me. Also, what worries me, 2 average 7th place finishes last year at the track, and no lead laps in the last 6 visits to the track. So that's the reason I stood away from Kyle this week. Dylan, meanwhile, 66 to 1. And after his terrible performance last week with Kyle at Las Vegas, considering how well Dylan has done at Las Vegas, there's no way I was taking him this week.
No, Dylan in like 20 starts in Phoenix with no top 5. I was like, it doesn't matter what number you put next to him, I'm not taking him. And Kyle, he looks like we talked about Fontana and these downforce levels that they're taking away. Kyle likes to drive kind of a looser car. And 2018 and 2019 was the last time kind of we've had these downforce levels. In fact, they said these are probably a little bit less than then, but then was kind of a precursor we can look at, and he was second, first, second in the 4 races.
So you think he's going to be one that's going to benefit a lot from the new package?
I think he'd benefit. Plus, even if, let's just say this package doesn't do a whole lot, let's just go off last year. Tyler Reddick finished 3rd in this race in that car last year. So I looked at that aspect. They're like, well, I'm 9 to 1 for a guy that's really good there. This car was 3rd last year. We know what Kyle can do in a lower downforce car. Sounds like a good bargain to me for right now. So that's the reason I went his direction. And yeah, also Dylan, this is not his track nor his week.
No. Colleague, you got AJ and Haley. AJ actually raced both races last year. Didn't really do much, a couple top 20s. Haley, at 150 to 1, he might be an interesting deep long shot because of the fact he's coming off a top 10 last week. And even though he didn't have great results in 4 Cup races so far, he's had a good run in the Xfinity Series here, so he seems to feel comfortable at the track. And again, he is coming off an 8th place finish. I don't think any of these drivers like you are going to win, but Haley is not like the worst idea in the world if you're looking that way.
No, like if you're looking at the little draft teams, put your fantasy team together, he'd probably be one that could get you a top 20. Allmendinger, for whatever reason, this has not been his track. Even the Xfinity Series, his best results 5th. Just the 2 Cup races, 20th and 12th last year, just really, for some reason, doesn't have a handle on this place yet. So do I think he's going to jump out and win the 4th Cup race of the season? No. So they're probably rightfully placed with their odds for winning. So, yeah, I'd probably punt on both of those guys.
Stenhouse, 1 top 5 in 20 races. So, and last year was a disaster. So forget about Stenhouse at 200 to 1.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't had a top 10 since November 12th, 2017.
Yeah, no,
there.
No good.
Not worth it.
Jones and Gregson, they got to get something going. They are off to a slow start right now. And even last week, we expected Gregson to maybe perform well based on his Xfinity Series history. Didn't happen. And same thing. You would expect he'll do well here because he dominated really in some races at the Xfinity Series. Won last year in the Xfinity Series. Jones, meanwhile, also dominated in his career in the Xfinity Series at this racetrack. 7 top 10s and 5 top 5s in 7 races. He does have 4 top 5s and 4 top 10s and 1 top 5 in the Cup Series, but last year didn't go too well. With these two, it's just a matter of you can't really take them now until they start showing you something.
Yeah, I thought about Gregson 100 to 1. I mean, 1st and 2nd are his 2 finishes there last year. He led 114 to 200 laps in the spring race. He led 43 laps and finished 2nd in the 2018 truck race. It's just, he's shown in the feeder series, he's pretty good there. I mean, three top twos in his last 5, but speeding 2-3 times last week on pit road. They're just uncharacteristically just not looking. They do not look anything like they looked the year before. No. They need to start getting some top 20s, and Jones just, especially at Phoenix. I mean, he was 14th in the spring, but his results before that, and this is with the team like Joe Gibbs Racing, was 28th, 22nd, 20th, 22nd, 25th, then his 14th last year. So I just don't feel good about either of those guys this weekend. To just win this race, it's not a wise investment.
Now let's go to Toyota. And again, Toyota, as we said, they've had some difficulty here lately. So we'll start with Wallace and Reddick. And again, now Reddick a little bit better last week. That's because he didn't do much at all the first couple of races. So he needs to continue that trajectory. But again, you said the third place finish. That was a different car. So with Reddick, I just need to see something. I got to see a top 10 before I could even think of taking him. The only good thing is you're getting 20-1 on Reddick. So that's the only good thing. Wallace is 35-1 coming off of 4th last week, but he's really shown pretty much nothing in his career at this track either. So I can't really say that this is a week that you're going to, I mean, again, the odds are the only good thing between these two drivers this week.
Yeah, and I don't think, just statistically, their past performances at this track, that even, let's just say practice comes and this new package suits the Toyotas, these aren't your Toyota guys. I mean, Wallace has one top 10 in the Cup Series. I mean, last year he was 22nd in both races. Just never was a factor. He's never even qualified in the top 12 rows of this. No, I'm sorry. 12th row is the best he's qualified ever
That's
in
pretty
Phoenix.
bad.
So,
yeah.
And Reddick was 23rd in the playoff race last year. So his third place to me in this race last year looks more of an anomaly than a trend, because his other finishes are 33rd, 19th, 29th, 19th, and as I just said, 23rd. So even if Toyota gets their ish together, and let's just say that this package suits them, probably not the two Toyota drivers you want to bet on.
All right. Let's talk about Gibbs. And we'll start with Christopher Bell, who's off to a pretty decent start. Had a good showing last week. What you like about Bell, and the only reason I didn't take Bell is because of the fact that I couldn't take everybody. And like I said, I eliminated the Toyota drivers. But Bell would have been my top choice because of the odds at 14-1, win an Xfinity Series, led 259 laps in the Xfinity Series in 5 races, which is nice. And really good last year at Richmond, including a win at New Hampshire. So at 14-1, if I was going to take a Toyota, he would be the driver to do it only based on the odds. I think Hamlin's the best of the three, but I just decide. But again, if I'm going with odds, and if I would have tried to fit him into my picks this week, I probably would have taken him.
Yeah, Hamlin's a safe play, but Bell's he's got no top 5s, but as you said, he's got 3 top 10s too in his last 4. So we know what he can do on light tracks. This season seems to be better. I mean, top 5 in Daytona, 2nd in his duel. He was running well in Fontana. It wasn't his fault he got caught up in that wreck in Fontana. So I don't put a lot of negative demerits on him yet. So we'll see what he can do this weekend. A solid top 10. Hey, if Toyota gets the package right, I just said what Kyle did with Toyota in 2018 and 2019. So I'd be curious. Bell could be a good beneficiary of that 14-1, and he's also started. He qualified 17th the playoff race last year, but part of that was 4th, 8th, 4th. So he could qualify well there too, and in turn, those odds may not be 14-1 for long.
Yeah, I would definitely take him before qualifying.
Yeah.
Truex 11-1 and Hamlin 10-1. Truex's only win was 21 out of 34 races. So keep that in mind. But in 2021, he finished 1st and 2nd. Problem is, car changed. And it was a disaster pretty much last year, including the crash in this race. Hamlin, now he has 6 top 5s in his last 10, including the 2019 win, which is his 2nd win. 16 top 5s overall out of 35 races. But last year, the new car, 13th and 8th is just okay. No laps led in the last 3 races. The good news is 10-1 is not bad for Hamlin. Won Richmond last year and was pretty good at both Richmond and New Hampshire. The only thing was he wasn't all that great here last year.
Yeah. He's the one that, like I said, you said a safe play. I mean, 11 top 10s his last 14 there, 5 top 5s, last 8 in general, 1st and 4th at Richmond, 6th at Loudon, led 203 laps in Martinsville in the fall. So he's there, but as you said, he hasn't won. He hasn't got the job done. And we see out of this package, this new, hey, that could suit him. He could end up doing well there. But I also would almost look at it as, hey, let's get out here in the top 10 and let's learn some valuable data from when we come back. Because the fall race matters more than this race. Truex, I like the fact that he won the class. Short track package. Granted, you're not going to take a quarter-mile track and compare it to a mile track, but he has won. He's won here in the past. But in fact, 2 years ago he won this race. But it's just the 35th and 15th last year is what kind of scared me a little bit from him.
And he's got the same odds basically as Hamlin. So again, since you can't take everybody, Hamlin just seems like a little safer bet.
That's why I went with him over Bell and Truex. I'm getting a safer bet out of him than I know at least Hamlin could be in the top 10. And then you get him there. He doesn't have some bad luck. We'll see what happens because I just don't trust the other two like I do Hamlin in that standpoint. And you look at the way Hamlin's qualified since 2017, the fall race in 2017, he's been in the top 10 every time minus last fall. He was 21st. But even for this race last year, he qualified second. So he's probably not staying 10-1 long.
Yeah, the good thing with Truex is his results are improving so far each race this season. He's quietly 5th because we haven't heard a peep out of him the entire season. And he's 5th in points. So he's got to start leading some laps before we can feel comfortable. But that, again, it doesn't mean that he can't win this week. He could go out. He could do what Byron did last week. And he's capable of doing it. It's just, again, we can't take them all. Okay. Yeah. And then Gibbs, 50-1, first Cup race, I believe. Did he run a Cup last year? No, right?
No, it's because his dad passed away.
That's right. He was supposed to run a Cup. And
that's why I kind of look at this weekend with him as this could be a rough weekend for him. He hasn't been back since there, and that's got to be some bad memory. I mean, you won the championship, and then that happens after. I just feel like this weekend might be a little dark weekend for him, and it'd be hard to. Now, granted, hey, what better story to go out and win this race? I mean, that would be a heck of a story.
And he's got an Xfinity Series win and a runner-up.
Yeah, do you think his first win is going to come? I mean, again, you never know. I mean, you're getting from 50-1, but Toyota also didn't lead a single lap.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, if he was a Ford driver, I would throw a buck on him.
Oh, I would too. Yeah, but just that's where I struggle with it a little bit.
All right, now we go to the Fords. And we've got Penske, Cindric, Blaney, Logano. And I was going to put money. I tried to put money on all three. It was either I was going to lower the money on my top 4 like you had. See, you didn't have as much invested in the top 4 like I did, which is why you have 5. I only have 4. Logano would have been my 5th. I just decided to go that route because he won the race last year. He was the last one to win it. So but completely understand why you would want to go with Blaney and Logano because Blaney, this is one of his better tracks. And maybe this is the perfect week to win after what Kyle Petty said. But here's the funny thing. Sometimes these analysts, they say things they want people to take notice. I kind of think that's part of it. You know, who knows? Maybe he had a lot of money on Blaney last week, and he's upset, and he wants to throw it back in him. But let's remember, half, at least, if not 75% of the reason last year, while he wasn't winning the races at this time last year, was not his fault.
Pit crew.
Terrible pit crew. Yes. Did he make a couple of mistakes last year that cost him? Yes. But his pit crew killed him. He should have won a couple of races. Throw in the fact that he should have won the championship race last year, but they told him not to. How is that his fault? So he would have won this race last year. And I just think it's a little premature to be.
It is.
I understand if we're at the end of this year and he's still without a win, let's say. And then I'm with you, because now I'm going to get upset that Ryan Blaney isn't picking things up and winning and closing races. But it's still a little bit premature for him to be making a statement like he made.
Yeah, and I see what he's saying. I mean, we've talked about this on the show. Is we're waiting for him to step up and deliver that next step. And looking at it, I took a little bit deeper look and what Kyle was saying. And yeah, I mean, Blaney right now compared to Casey Kane, yeah, I mean, he's got 7 career wins. He's 68th all time. It's like you're in a Penske car, man. Eventually, you're going to have to see what Logano's doing. He went 17, 18, 19, 20, just 1 wins a year. That's it. And out of those wins, Pocono, Roval, Talladega. Those are it. And then 2021, he finally won 3 races in a year. That, to me, that was started the breakout. But what I think was holding Ryan Blaney back, as we mentioned, it was his pit crew. I know he's never going to throw them under the bus, but they have taken him out of more things than not. But he, in the playoffs, on his end, he kind of chokes in big moments. This isn't a big moment. That's why I'm going all in on Blaney this week, because I looked at it last year in the round of 8, and he admitted Vegas and Homestead were his own fault. He was in the 3rd place in Vegas when he made that mistake and spun on the backstretch and wrecked. He was 3rd at the time. Homestead exits his final pit stop, 3rd place. Did the Hamlin snafu. He downshifted instead of upshifted, and he spun. And that really kept him out of the championship 4, because, as you said, if he doesn't do that, he's probably getting that 4th wildcard spot, or that final wildcard spot in the Phoenix. He finished 2nd in that race, but he had a better car than Logano. He probably would have been the champion last year.
But just also keep in mind, if he would have had more help in the beginning of last year, and he had more wins, there's more confidence, less chance that I have to do everything myself, less chance that he makes some of those mistakes. So
it is.
I don't want to. I'm not trying to say he's made mistakes. He should live up to them. But when you don't get the help, it's kind of hard to kind of say, yeah, look, you got to do better.
It is. And I looked last year. So the last 3 years when he going into the rounds, like in those rounds that he's been eliminated in, he just kind of choked. But when he came out of it, he was really good. It's like when the pressure was off, he was 2nd in Phoenix last year. And he got 2021. He was 6th, 37th, 11th in the round of 8. And then he finished 4th at Phoenix. And then 2020, he was eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. He had 6 top 7s in the 7 races after. It just seems like when the pressure's on, he doesn't respond. That's probably a better way for Kyle Petty to say it than compare it, because I think Blaney's better than Casey Kane. Does he need to step up? Yes.
You could say that. I'm okay with saying that. Sure.
This is the perfect weekend for him after these comments. Sometimes driver analysts do this to not necessarily have a negative impact on that said driver. He's actually saying it to help that driver.
Maybe Kyle's going to put money on Blaney this week.
We don't know whether, and this could sometimes happen, sometimes team members may leak stuff to Kyle. Hey, this is what we feel, and would you say this, or how do you feel? Because we're trying to light the fire under him. Because I think this would light that fire under Blaney, because this, I don't think it's a coincidence he's saying it for this week going into this race, not last week going, because this is his track. I mean, 7 top 10s his last 8. He was 3rd place in 2019, both races, 10th and 6th in 2020. 10th and 4th last year. He led 35 laps. Or I'm sorry, 4th and 2nd last year. He led 35 laps in 2020. He led 143 laps in stage 2 of this race last year.
252 total last year.
Yep. 109 laps in the fall. Pit road is what kept him out of the win last year in this race. And the team kept him out of the win for the fall race. He could have swept Phoenix last year. And after the way the season started, you also got to look, he was 3rd in the playoff race in Martinsville last year. And then if you want to be all fairness, he did respond to that race. So if there's any races he's going to respond and have the mic drop back to Kyle Petty, this is the track. So I kind of don't think that's a coincidence that those comments were made going into this week.
And the way you look at it, too, is if he doesn't respond, then you can't lose. Yeah. Then you're like, hey, see, I told you. I mean, so I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna throw a few $100 on him if he wins, and then if I can't lose, so I just cannot. So you're right, a really good time to do it. But look, here's another thing that we've talked about, and you just said it with his pit crew, and I did see him get a little bit upset last year. But what's happening is he's just getting upset. He's not getting upset directing it at anybody specifically. And that's the next step. He is going now. I don't know if he feels he's not at that level yet that he can do that. Maybe I don't know. But if I was in his camp, I would be, look, you've got to I don't mind you being upset. That's awesome. Channel that anger to your racing. But if this keeps happening, you have got to stick up for yourself. And you've got to, and if nobody is going to stick up for yourself in your own camp and publicly, if by doing it this way, where he's not going to publicly shame anybody, hasn't worked, then you got to start publicly shaming people.
You do, because with him, you can look at, I don't know how it ended up. He was in the top 2 of the stage wins last year. I know going into the playoffs, he had him and Truex were 1-2, and I don't think that really changed much. How does the guy with the most stage wins not have a race win? That tells you that they're dropping the ball on him. And it happened a lot. We talked about this. The final pit stops, his crew, it's not just him.
It was really bad. I remember that one race, I forget, maybe it was this one, where he kept coming in and kept coming out like 6 or 7 spots.
Yep. Then he'd make it back up, and then it was this one. And he still led over 100 laps. So if he can get a pit crew that can consistently not lose him spots on pit road, they don't even have to gain him spots. Just if he comes in 5th, let him exit 5th. Because what happens is he comes in 5th and he exits 12th. He comes in 3rd and he exits 8th. He loses the track position. If you can, I can't think of many times where he's came in and actually gained spots.
Whenever I have money on him and he comes into the pit and it comes out the same, that's awesome. That's a win. That's a win. You never expect him to go in and improve on pit road. It just doesn't happen. So. No,
and all these comments that are getting directed at him, he needs to eventually come in like, what about this?
Yes.
When I came in. So I kind of feel like we're getting to that point now where he's eventually getting, if he doesn't show up this weekend and his pit crew doesn't let him down, then there's not many other excuses.
Nope.
Especially for a place that Logano just won the championship last year.
Now, again, we'll find out if the changes are going to affect it much, but I can't imagine they can affect it that much.
No, they were Logano led 187 laps by himself last year in this race, and Blaney led 109. It's just, even if there's changes, you don't lose. Where they lose 50 laps this time around? Right. They're still leading laps. So I just can't see him going that far backwards.
Yeah, Blaney also has 2 runner-ups in 3 Xfinity Series races.
Yeah, this is a good track for him.
Logano with 16 top 10s in 28 races. 8 of those are top 5s, and 3 wins, including 20 and 22. So, but look, that's why you went the route of Logano, Blaney, not Larson.
Yep.
So you basically stood away from Larson, and who else was like a top driver you stood away from?
Truex. I basically at the top minus Larson, Truex, Byron, Harvick.
Okay. Yeah, and I stood away from Logano. He was the top one, like I said, I stayed away from.
Yeah.
All right, so that pretty much wraps it up. We only have a few more to go, and that includes Burton. For this group, and then we've got one more, actually 2 more to go before we wrap it all up. Because Burton, not the week to take him. No laps led in the Xfinity Series. No good results last year. But you go to Stewart-Haas, and Preece and Almirola, not so much. But see, Briscoe, I understand why you would take him. He won the race last year, 4th in the championship race, which is an accomplishment. But Briscoe is 32nd in points. Preece is 31st in points. And Almirola is 21st in points. And we have talked about this with Kevin Harvick for the last couple of years about the teammates that he has and how it's really and Briscoe so far has not shown anything that we expected him to. I'm upset being on my fantasy team that Preece has also not shown anything. You guys, now it's early, but you guys expected Preece to be a little bit better than this. But Harvick, this is the one. Yeah, we talked about Truex. This is actually the one that I was the most surprised that you did not take. Now, I we're going to talk about Harvick, his overall stats here with 29 top 10s in 40 races, 19 of those top 5s, 9 of those wins, over 1,600 laps led, and 21 top 10s in his last 22 races at Phoenix. Last year, 1st and 2nd at Richmond, 5th at New Hampshire. Here, 6th and 5th. But here's the problem. He didn't lead a lap last year and has only led 1 lap in his last 5 races. And we've talked about this before. The changes that were made here are kind of coincidental at the same time that he has not been the dominant car that he was. Yeah. So that is where I can see why you would say, yeah, I just don't like the way he's raced ever since the changes. And yeah, it's a good fantasy driver still here, but I don't know if he's ever going to be able to dominate here like he used to.
That was my fear. And granted, we use Barstool for these odds because DraftKings and Fan, none of these, they're the only website that we could find that had odds. I didn't like the 12-1 number.
I was surprised he was 12-1. I don't think he's been 12-1 in a year.
No, he's been 18 to 20-1. It seems like he was those numbers. I jump all over it. But since the reconfiguration, he's 0 for 8. He's not won there. Prior to the reconfiguration, he had 7 wins and 9 top 2s and 22 starts prior to that. Since he's 0 for 8, it's just he could get to the top 5, but he's not much better than 5th. And you look at 7th, 6th, 8th, 8th, 6th, 5th. I mean, that's kind of his finishes since then. So he's going to be a top 10 driver, but can he win? 12-1 was a little steep for that when I could go 18-1 a few spots back. In Briscoe, I think this is a statement race for Stewart-Haas because if they're going to – this is the get-right race. If they don't get it right this race, it's not going to happen in Atlanta. They weren't very good there in that configuration last year. They're so far back in points.
Aren't you surprised, though, at Briscoe so far? I mean, he has to have a top 10 this week.
He's got to. I mean, first and fourth last year. He's got to get a top 10. And really, what better spot to go ahead and get the win out of the way? I mean, you've got to put the pressures on. Almirola, I didn't expect it to be this bad, but I don't think he's going to go out and win this race. I mean, he hasn't had a top 5 here since 2019 in this race, coincidentally enough, but he's got to get a top 15. He doesn't have one this year. And Priest, it's just been baffling I think it goes to show how off Stewart-Haas has been. If Priest is even hopping in this car and not doing anything with it. So they need some help because if I'm Tony Stewart and Gene Haas, I'm like, well, the guy that's 3rd in points is leaving at the end of the year. We don't have him anymore. Who do we have left? Oh, 3 guys 30th or worse in points.
What is there? What are their plans for next year?
They don't have a replacement for him yet. I think what the writing on the wall is supposed to be, I'm assuming Cole Custer would just
oh, wow. That's going to change everything. Yeah.
But what I could see happening, and it's a tough call, is Stenhouse Jr. come over. The reason I use his name is Kevin Harvick is his agent.
Oh, wow.
And
but, I mean, come on. What is that going to do?
He's won Daytona and he's still packing points.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he's going to turn them into an instant contender. So they need to they've gotten younger, but they need to get better. I think that's why you see Trackhouse lock in Suarez and Chastain, Hendrick lock in Bowman, because I know that ride could be desirable for a younger, proven guy.
Well, again, Almirola, the only reason he's here is because of the money.
Smithfield, yeah, they wanted him back, yeah. And I don't see him, if he continues this year doing like this, I think he walks at the end of the year too. I mean, why would he want to keep – he wanted to leave last year. Smithfield talked him into coming back. Hey, look, we want you. We need you. We need the sponsorship. He's year to year.
What's the infatuation with Smithfield and Almirola?
They followed him over there from Petty. They really just love Almirola.
Okay.
So, and I think it was one of those, if we don't have you, we're pulling the sponsorship from this car. And Stewart was probably like, we really need you. And Smithfield's like, we really like you to come back. So it's year to year, but you can't be happy running mid to back late pack all race. It's just not good.
By the way, before we move on, I completely forgot to talk about Cindric because I actually have money on Cindric this week. So
he's another one that Kyle Petty called out. And again, he's not wrong saying he won Daytona, but it's been really nothing since.
He was a rookie.
Exactly.
Relax.
Yeah.
And
He went,
he's sixth. He's sixth last week. I mean, come
and
on.
he was 11th in this race in the fall, so it's not like he was bad as a rookie.
And his Xfinity Series history is tremendous here.
Yeah, 3 straight top 2s.
With 2 wins.
And you get him for 50 to 1.
50 to 1 on a Penske Ford.
Yeah, it's almost insulting that he's the same number as Almirola.
So that's why I put money on him. I says, hey, look, if you didn't get the 6th last week and he was still in a rut, that's different. But you got something going.
Yep.
Why not? So yeah, so I felt definitely I had to put money on Cindric with especially if I was going to drop Logano. And then we kind of wrap up with the 2 guys that you mentioned at the top of the show that you put money on, Keselowski and Buescher. RFK 40 to 1 Keselowski, 80 to 1 Buescher. I actually put money on Keselowski again this week in my futures. So I don't think we even care about what they did last year, because last year was a pretty bad year, even though Buescher finished 10th in this race last year. Yep. Why did you go with both of these drivers this week?
I just felt for their odds in the Ford. The Ford reason is those odds where they're sitting at, and you get Ford drivers for Keselowski, a proven champion, at 40 to 1, and you get Buescher at 81 in a race he finished 10th at. I'm like, well, they're better than last year. And let's say Ford is equally as good on this track as they were last year. Then doesn't their performance have to kind of rival the Penske's, is my brain was going with, and you're getting them for quadruple the odds. And Keselowski at one point was really good here. I mean, 2nd in the playoff race in 2020, 4th in this race 2021, 10th in the fall race in 2021. Last year was the only the thing that just didn't obviously make sense.
Yeah.
But that was because of the new car and the new team. And with Buescher being a top 10 last year, it just made sense that if you're going to go with a couple long shots, let's go with some drivers that they could win.
And by the way, if they want to continue the kind of start that they've had, they have to do well this week.
They do.
Because they're back in 18th and 25th, and it's the same thing from last year. All that momentum that we started with is pretty much out the window. So they have to keep this momentum going.
Yes.
So, all right. Top 3 picks, who would you go with?
Blaney. I'm going to say Blaney, Logano, and Chastain. I'll go heavy, and I'll go the sleeper is Suarez.
Yeah, Suarez. Yeah, I might go with Cindric, but Suarez is a good one. All right, so where are we again next week?
Atlanta.
That's right. So that should be at least fun. Now, maybe the changes that they'll make on Sunday will make it better.
Hope so.
We hope so.
Hey, at least it doesn't. I applaud them for at least recognizing there's a problem and trying to fix it.
Well, they better. It's their championship race.
Well, if this doesn't work, you at least know what direction. You have the old way that didn't work, and this way doesn't work. You at least know there's a common ground somewhere in the middle that smarter gearheads can figure out. So hopefully they can keep tinkering with it.
By the way, NASCAR, do a better job with your sponsors. I mean, this United Rentals, people might have to squint to see it on my screen. That's because they didn't give us an opportunity. They gave us this little tiny logo, and I just can't figure out why. I mean, if you're United, I'm like, hey, man, I'm paying all this money for sponsorship. Give me a big logo in your media section so businesses like ours that promote the sport can have the big logo on the screen. I can't put I can't have it big because then it would be all out of whack. And I have enough time to spend doing things on my own. I'm not a one of those computer experts that know how to change the form of a banner on my. That's out of my league. So I have enough things to do on this channel. Anyway.
Just get it right like they used to.
Yeah, make it easy. Don't make it hard for us.
Yeah.
All right. So Atlanta next week, and again, CJ returns. So we'll start with his picks again next week on the show. CJ will be back next week also to talk about F1. You will not be talking Indy, I guess, for another 3 weeks.
Yeah, another couple weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
Still off. So, yep.
And again, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. As always, the traffic has been excellent the last few weeks. Let's hope to continue this, and anything that you guys can do, especially liking and sharing the videos, that really helps us out big time. We appreciate it. So, Eric, by the way, next time we talk, which I can't wait, it'll be it'll be only hours away from the tip-off of the college basketball
March Madness
tournament. So
it's here.
we'll talk to you next week.
Yep, sounds good. Talk to you then.